Welcoming, people of Earth. This is We the People of Earth, and this is the next frontier. Today we'll be talking again about the topic of intelligent design. In our last discussion of intelligent design, we've got off on some of the intelligently designed tangents, but today we're going to talk about the design of our design. That's right, the design of our design. Last time we postulated the story that our Bibles and our sciences are all designed, all with the knowledge of some higher power. That higher power many of you may know as and understand as God. And for those of you who may be atheists among you, maybe you could conceive of the concept that we delivered before, that alien influence either planted our species or planted our intelligence at the early time of man's communication and shaped his history to provide him a training plan for the future. That's right. The design of our history was a training plan for the future of now, with one concept, one lesson in mind, and a purpose to that lesson, and a purpose for that higher power that you know as God, Allah, Allahu Akbar, or whatever his name might be. The question is the answer. Well, actually, if God, and this is, I'm going to ask you this question, it's just a sort of a side question, it's because I asked it before, and I just liked it because it's come up here. If God was, not what you know of him as, but if God was an action, and his primary action was learning, what is the last question that God, as an action of learning, would ever want to know the answer to? Of course we know God knows everything, but, well, let's get on with the part of the story. So, what would God have to do with the planet Earth? Well, first thing is, God wouldn't need to come around messing around with planet Earth. He would know what's gonna happen. He would set a plan in motion. But what is his design plan? Okay, now, by the way, if it was aliens or a future species, we have to think of it. Okay, what if we were aliens? We weren't really aliens. We created a planet, and we're going to get there in the future, but we don't have the spaceships that can get there fast enough. So we go plant the planet, so we're going to go there in the future. But what would we not want to happen on that planet? Well, we wouldn't want Klingons in outer space. We wouldn't want killers in space. If we allowed killers in space, then they could threaten us. And so, any intelligent God in the universe wouldn't allow killers in space. And so what does an intelligent God do? He doesn't have to do a lot. You know, eventually they're going to get the space technology, but guess what? He gave us doomsday clocks, which I call nukes. Well, I call them big thing 12s. He gonna clock to that, you're out. And, well, doomsday clocks, by the way, you know them as weapons of mass destruction. So he gave us the power to destroy ourselves and the power to save ourselves. But guess what? We don't really need his divine intervention anymore. He's already given his words. He's already given, well, if you're a Christian, he's given his son as his message, as his delivery of peace on earth. And so let's take the biblical perspective of this, because I think it's interesting. Well, actually, it's interesting to note, here we are in 2012, on, well, an anniversary, 2012, the anniversary of 9/11. And, well, it's not going good in the Muslim world right now, and quite frankly, I think the movie is disgusting that they're complaining about, and to be that sacrilegious with somebody's religion is just, it's just dangerous. It's just bad. It's just, you know, maybe it's free speech, but sometimes, well, I think at some point in time, such free speech becomes mind pornography and, well, anyway, or intended as an act of hate. And so such speech, well, anyway, let's not go there. I'm just saying that both sides are right and both sides are wrong, and that until we recognize that both sides are right and both sides are wrong, we won't get across our lines. We won't build our bridges. Our bridges will be built to nowhere. The building of bridges today are bridges built to nowhere. Because if your world falls apart, who's going to use your bridges? But anyway, so the point of this is this. Let's go back to the biblical thing. Let's pass your tree of knowledge, and if you don't know the stories of Adam and Eve, well, let's just go back to them. Interesting little stories. I mean, I don't want to get like biblical on you, but like Adam and Eve, like well, I'll ask you this question: did your God create Adam and Eve? Did your God create Abraham? Did your God create Moses? And I think the answer you will say, if you're Jew, is of course yes. If you're Christian, is of course yes. And if you're Muslim, is of course yes. And so it becomes simple mathematics that you're all working for the same God. And you're arguing over, and this is getting really weird. Okay, so, and then, you know, we get down to like the second story when, well, Citizen Cain killed Citizen Abel. Citizen Cain killed Citizen Abel. Killing was the second story in the Bible, where the inable killed the able. Well, that was a biblical reference to something. It was an important lesson to something. In fact, through the lessons we can learn more lessons. Because, well, why, for example, did Abraham have his son saved at the last minute by God? And yet, in our story, God sacrificed her own son, Jesus, on the cross. Now, then you get to this question: was Jesus a Christian? Who was the first Christian? Was Jesus a Christian? I think you might have to come to the conclusion that no, he was the Messiah of the Jews, therefore a Jew. But when the Jews don't accept him as a Messiah, that doesn't mean he's all of a sudden not a Jew. And it all of a sudden doesn't mean if they didn't accept him back then, they couldn't come around to his thinking and say, oh, okay, it was just a matter of time to get the story right. And you know what? We were designed to get it wrong. But interestingly, I'll have some numbers that as a boy at 12 interested me in the timeline of religions. And that is the timeline of, well, the top 5 are most interesting, with Hinduism being like a mini god paradigm that happened many thousands of years ago, maybe even preceding, or you could do the history on it in terms of where it was, to the one god paradigm of the Torah. And then you can then track to, this is interesting, 600 years before Christ was an amazing time in the eastern part of the world, with the great prophet Buddha and China Tao and Confucius and all kinds, an explosion from the eastern world of thought, an extension of Hindu ideas of karma. And, well, 600 years before Christ that happened, and then Christ came around, and it's hard to imagine that in his missing years that he didn't get some of that information from the East and give a little more of karma to the Jewish religion in his teachings and his gospel. And then, what was also interesting in the 600s is 600 years later, the Prophet Muhammad came along. 600. Were those visitation of aliens or God? It doesn't matter. Why did it happen in 600? It's just an interesting question. But then there was another interesting 300 question between Christ and between the Prophet Muhammad, and that's the Emperor Constantine, who decided to pattern Christianity to become his religion of war. And that's what the Trinity was born. And there's a lot of very interesting good things about the Trinity. And I don't see what we might think that might be wrong and what be right. And well, it's all something we can learn by. But you know, if like Jesus is the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, whatever, it's 1 = 1 = 1, oh God. But anyway, it happened 300 AD, 300 before Muhammad. And then when Muhammad came along, the primary part of his biblical equation, I'm not going to get into all the differences and practices between the religions, but at the highest levels of the code, he believed in the Torah, he believed in the gospel of Jesus, not necessarily the books of the later apostles. Now, we also said God has no partners, which actually does make some interesting sense, because in the Torah it says, put no others before him. Theoretically, that would be his own son. Through the Trinity, they get around it, but why are we getting over this battle over a single God and his intention? His intention is quite simple. We must adopt peace on earth before we blow ourselves up. We today are like a single Israeli missile strike away, even a nuclear strike on Iran, from Armageddon. They go stop Iran from building their nukes. They build that red line and cross the red light, and all of a sudden, we in the world are on Armageddon. See, at some point in time, we must realize that the cost of Armageddon is too high, and that the only way is peace on earth. We must realize that investing in justice and peace is the only path, and that we must build a future for all people. We must invest in all people throughout the world and disarm. We must bring in all arms. We must cancel all arms. We must create a secure state with no need for arms of war, and justice, so that there's no need for the people to fear tyranny or dictatorship. And our world must be a networked, intelligent world, intelligently designed, where we can actually take the power of our own minds networked together and compute. And here's why we can do it. Because God gave us a gift for this simple act of choosing justice and peace. In fact, it's the gift, it's the challenge. The only way we achieve it is to choose one world order of one enterprise together, to choose a capitalist, communist enterprise of us under one God, whether it's an alien God of a higher power of minds, an alien God of science, but it wouldn't see. God is a God of science. Truth is truth. God is truth. Al-Haq 51. Al-Haq 51 is the face of God, who should bring all Muslims in line to make them realize that all men are Muslim brothers and all men are Christian brothers. And guess what? From Adam and Eve, if we all work for the same God, and if Adam and Eve were the beginning, and if they were Jews, and if Abraham was a Jew, are we not all Jews? Are we not all people on earth Jews? And if we accepted that, and they let us into our club, how long do we have to have war on this planet if we all accepted that we're Jews? And then, well, we could let them still have their old Jew club. But if we just accepted that we are in this together and respect each other and coexist under one world with infinite money out of infinite mind. In our economics lesson, I'll explain to you how single bank of us could infinitely build out our planet and explore our universe. Thank you very much.